Welcome to Puddlecast, where we discuss safety, water, environment, and career development topics. Let's jump in.
Hello, everybody. It's Glenn again. I've got a guest here today that I'll have introduce himself in a minute. But as we always do, I start with a quote to talk about kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit today that's reflective. And I think this really will help our conversation today, or capture it, and that is a quote by Peter Drucker: "The best way to predict the future is to create it." So with that, I'm going to have my guest introduce himself and talk a little bit about himself. Welcome, Nathan.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. I'm Nathan Hardebeck. I have started in the stormwater world way back in about 2000 and started a company back then as my dad got on an airplane and struck up a conversation with a guy, and he said, figure it out. And so we started a company from there and been in the stormwater consulting business, working with municipalities and industry and construction projects ever since. And really training was something as an aspect of it, but it's really taken on a much bigger role. We've started a training academy to support helping people get through the pain of the rain going down the drain.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think it's fair. I've known you almost as long as you've been in stormwater.
Absolutely. You were one of my first clients where I was shaking in my boots like, I'm going to talk about this thing that I sort of know something about, but let's try to do this together.
And from my story, I had just started as a maintenance supervisor for the first time, so we were both starting out our careers. So tell me about why you're passionate about stormwater now. I mean, I know why you were in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I was passionate because my dad told me that was my career choice, right? So I got into that. But it has evolved to really trying to help people through difficult issues. Stormwater is not necessarily something that you start a business and go, oh, I need to deal with this thing. It's something that oftentimes you have to learn. You experience it oftentimes through pain. Somebody hands you a permit or somebody tells you that you've done something wrong, and so you've got to react to that. And there's a large understanding that has to come as a part of that, because these permits are 60, 70 pages long, and they have language in it that's only made up for stormwater people, and it's all full of acronyms. And so trying to dissect that and learn how to implement things that you're being asked to do is important. And I guess the passion is trying to teach the why behind the what. This permit says I have to do it, and I'm having to do it, but why are you having to do it? And really understanding, the water as a resource and how our influence to that is a cost, not only to the individual business, but as a society as well. And how do we manage this together to make sure we got clean water for our future generations and places that we can go and experience the same thing our great-grandfather did moving forward.
So I imagine you've seen a ton of growth in that from 2000 to 2024.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we were talking about oil and grease as the pollutant of concern that was going to contaminate the ocean, and there was a handful of people. It was the big construction projects and the big cities and counties that had to do this. But we learned that we were dying a death of 1,000 cuts. It wasn't just the big players in the watershed or big players in the area that were causing the most pollution. It was a culminated value of all the smaller sites or the smaller activities having an equal or greater input to the system than just the city or the county or just the big 300-acre processing plant. And the amount of people that have had to learn that stormwater is one word, by the way, it's officially one word. The amount of people that had to learn that stormwater was one word over that period of time has migrated to your local business. We have cities and counties showing up at the grocery store and at restaurants and things like that saying, you got to protect our infrastructure. We have a permit and we need you to not be pouring things down the drain because it costs us money, which then we have to tax you on to get more Vector trucks and more sweeper trucks to maintain. So that education process has migrated from just a handful of people to even kids are learning this stuff in school. It's part of their K through 12 environmental education part, or You can actually get a college degree in stormwater now. So it's what I've seen, the growth has been this obscurity, this thing that we didn't, that all of a sudden had this name that we used to call it rain. And now we have this name over it, right? To where people are choosing this as a career path moving forward, because more and more people are having to find it. We're not just oil and grease anymore. We're talking about PFAS and 6-PPDQ, these chemistries that are very, very small in water, but we're having to remove them because we're finding out that they cause cancer or they kill fish almost instantaneously, or all these things. So, it's the science is growing, and we're having to support the science by practice, which is different.
It's awesome. I will say my spell check actually now makes it one word.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Good for you, man. We have the argument. Every state I go into, we have that argument.
Yeah. It's kind of funny that way. So I think that's to my experience from where I was, is that's what I heard a lot at the beginning of this in 2000, 2001 and 2 is, why am I paying a fee because it rains?
For sure. Yep.
And you don't hear that anymore.
Right.
They understand that it's an environmental protection and a legacy type of issue. So
right.
I think that's
well, we have more of it than we've ever had. So, right, storm in a natural environment, less than 1% that comes out of a cloud actually sits at the surface. The more hard surfaces that we put down, the more roofs, the more sidewalks, we increase the volume of material at the surface by 30 times. And we the things that we now call catch basins or inlets, we used to call them storm drains, and they were put on the side of the road to plumb the water off of the road and get it to a receiving water as fast as we can.
right.
Just so that people could drive from point A to point B without hydroplaning. Now we're being asked to slow it down, capture it, and we have more of it than we've ever had before. So what are we going to do with it? So the magnitude of the issue has not only increased from a what's in it standpoint, but also the volume of it. Where do we put it?
Right.
Where do we take all this stuff that now used to go into the ground? Where do we put it at the surface?
I've always found it ironic that we have spent the last 50 years taking ditches out and putting pipes in.
Yeah.
And now we're going to spend the next 50 reversing that process.
That's right.
It's interesting piece, because we found out actually the ditches work better than the pipes.
That's right.
So want to talk a little bit about, because what we talk a lot about is the human part, and you're talking about relationships for sure, and creating those. So as a leader of multiple companies in your career, how has that shown up, and how have you built teams in what is relatively a new business model?
Yeah. So the first is building the understanding of what you're doing. You have to come in and you have to understand the drivers behind why you're out there, why you're pursuing this. And if you have that as the background, it gives purpose to what you're doing. If you're just doing things and you're just cleaning out a detention pond, or you're just sucking out catch basins because that's your job, it doesn't necessarily give you the motivation to want to do that job to the max.
Right.
So understanding sort of your purpose behind why you're doing what you're doing oftentimes is the first thing to overcome. The second is making sure that you're doing it in a way that is respectful, not only of the people that are having to do it because they have to. So when I'm going in and I'm building a stormwater team for a consulting group or whatever, we're not the first phone call. We're not the desired phone call.
Right.
We only get called out when there's a problem. Yeah. So you're entering already you're entering a place where you're not necessarily an invited guest. You're there because you have to solve a problem for somebody's pain. And so it already puts you at this awkward place. And you have to be able to bridge the policy and the why to practice and try to mitigate the pain. It's going to cost this business money to do something for a purpose that it doesn't help them make money. It doesn't help them move forward. How do you mitigate that cost by helping educate and doing your job as effective and efficient as possible, so it mitigates their risk moving forward.
Right.
So a lot of it's building that culture into your team, that it's not just, we don't want to be seen as ambulance chasers. We don't want to be, we want to be seen more like firefighters if possible. We're here to help. I can't tell you how many people have called me out to a project and kicked me off.
Wow.
Because they're like, you're a regulator. You're out here to cause problems for. No, you called me. I'm here to help you. But because you use certain words, or because you express yourself or hold yourself in a certain way, they think that you're the regulator that's causing the issue. And they're like, get out of here. We don't do any of that. What are you looking at the drains for? And anyway, it's overcoming that issue.
Yeah. So that was kind of my follow-up there is, what are some of the issues you find once you get in there that they have that they called you for a reason, they kick you off, but they end up calling you back because they need you. So what are some of those, maybe the top 2 or 3 key issues that you run into?
Yeah. One, if they're a permitted facility, it's generally always paperwork. Oftentimes when you have a permit, there's a lot of record keeping and reporting that people have to do, and they don't see that as a valuable investment by their team members to go do. This is I have to, but those, I say it all the time in my classes, absence of information is assumption of guilt. Yeah. And if you are not reporting this and sending it out to the reporting mechanism that you have, there are people in their pajamas that are looking for places of holes.
Right.
And that's when the door gets kicked open and people get interested with you. The second is, they don't have an internal education program that teaches everybody on the staff why it's important to protect stormwater. They have 1 or 2 people in the company that knows that stormwater is one word and it's an issue. And everybody else just goes about their business. So you have 2 people that are saying, hey, don't pour things down the drains, don't do this, while you've got another person who's trying to do their job and they're pressure washing all the water out of the shop floor into the drain because it makes it disappear.
Right.
And so they're doing exactly what they're supposed to for the company, not knowing that they're putting the company at risk in another area because there hasn't been an internal education problem. And then finally, it's if companies or if municipalities have to take samples of things, the levels that we are measuring certain pollutants at, we've gone from parts per million to parts per billion to parts per trillion.
Wow.
And people that don't have good sampling practices are creating false positives. They're putting stormwater into vessels, sending them to laboratories. Those laboratories are processing and saying, hey, this is bad stormwater, when in fact it could have been that the water ran over that person's finger who just got done changing the oil filter because they've been dedicated the stormwater person.
Right.
Here,
Right.
you go out and take the samples with no training, and they scoop something out of a Folgers can, or they let water run over their finger into the jar, or the jar itself has, I can't tell you how many 2 liter bottles of Coke people have handed me and said, this is my stormwater. I said, you really want me to send this to lab and tell the rest of the world that this is you as a stormwater manager for your site? I don't think you want to do it. So there's a lack of training that those folks have, and we're communicating out to the public that this is what's in our stormwater when they don't have that background.
Right. So how do you help them fix those
Yeah.
biggies?
Yeah. So you have to come in and you have to say, listen, this is a bigger deal than you want it to be, and we have to be able to train your folks on. We have to train your folks that are going to do all the generate the report card for you as a business, that are going to be your stormwater team about this. But we also have to train your greater community that when you come and you park over my catch basin and you have a leaking vehicle, it can cost us 5-6 figures to fix that.
Right.
So please make sure that you're conscious. Don't throw your cigarette butts down our drains anymore. We've given you this location to do that. Please make sure you're doing it in that designated location. It's trying to get everybody to, it doesn't have to be your primary focus, but it rains on everybody.
It does. Even in Arizona.
Even in
the
Arizona,
desert.
even in those locations. And you don't have to be the stormwater person for the company to greatly affect how that happens. In fact, sometimes you have to communicate to your client base or your customers that come onto your piece of property about where they can and can't go. One of the construction projects that I had, their biggest challenge was actually the utility person that didn't want to use the gravel roads that were installed there. They wanted to use their 4-wheel drive and track it all out through the mud and then run it out onto the city street. So your communication has to go beyond just your team. Sometimes it has to go to the people that get on your property.
So to me, you're about one generation in now, right? 20 years.
Yep.
And of course, our newest generations are very environmentally focused.
Yep.
They've been better educated at the lower levels of education about environmental impacts. Something that you and I never received whatsoever.
No.
We learned it on the fly.
Right.
So how long do you think how many generations do you think it'll take to get to where, there's no one using the Coke bottles? And
yeah, I think we're probably the next 2 generations, the pain that folks are feeling from this, whether that be because municipalities have to add taxes to have more equipment, to do more maintenance on the infrastructure, where businesses are feeling this as part of it's an expense to their business. And because we're doing a better job with public outreach and education. You see the only rain down the drain stickers on the catch basins. You see those placards there. You see people taking that conscious effort. Okay, so here's my greatest. I would say we're probably 2 generations away from it. My dad came out of the solid waste industry, and he said, and during his process, they were teaching recycling.
Right.
Recycling started because of the kids. Hey, mom and dad, the can goes in the blue bucket.
Right.
They learned it in school, and it graduated through, and that changed the culture through that process. Because at that time, my grandpa started a garbage company with a flatbed truck and 4 boys on the back, and they threw everything stuff, and they put it in places that aren't where you're supposed to.
Right.
When we were starting garbage, right? Garbage just make it disappear.
Right.
And the kids, and we're seeing this in stormwater as well, is that the kids are starting to educate their parents, and that's starting to grow that awareness going forward.
Awesome. I got a couple of other things, I suppose. So, what are you working on today?
Yeah, today is growing that awareness through training and education. I still do all of my consulting, and I still go around and help people get through their permits and all that kind of thing. But we were in the process of building a training facility that helps people understand. A lot of stormwater is hands-on stuff, and so you still want to have this practical, what are best management practices that we can put in the field, and how do you install them, and how do you do those things. But there's also a net environmental benefit to not having to schedule all of your team gone all at the same time to be in a dedicated location, or put carbon emissions in the air and 6 ppdq and copper on the ground as you're trying to get somewhere. And we were in the process of building a training facility, which may still come about, but because of COVID, it shut that whole thing down.
Right.
And for 7 years prior to that, I was doing research on how do you build these learning management systems, and the cost that I was getting for this stuff was just absolutely astronomical. And the only blessing of COVID was that as a society, it became acceptable to have things shot on an iPhone and see split screen. And so all these people that had all these fancy learning management systems, and you need to have actors, and you need to have this whole, film crew come out to do these things, was, hey, go get an iPhone, be able to put this stuff together in an intelligible way, and here's a platform that you can launch from to train this. So we launched the CWT Training Academy, which is essentially a virtual on-demand platform for not only stormwater and water-related topics, but safety, environment, and career development. And really been excited at the growth curve that we've seen out of that, just exponentially. It takes a while to people get used to it, but we're also seeing that shift happen to where we can get people educated even on a base, get the background built so that when they go to a live class and they do the hands-on portion, which is absolutely critical in a lot of areas, we don't have to spend the time talking about the background because you've already got that as a prerequisite coming in.
Yeah, we found that in our trainings. That's always we have a 2-day training because you've got to spend the first day getting everybody set and understand the language, and then the second day is the impactful.
Yep. And
there's paying hotels and all these other things where we now can eliminate that and lower the cost and get to more people
and be more effective. The time that you spent is more. It's more effective. It's more impactful because you're not spending the time trying to define terms and all that stuff in the background. Yeah.
Right. So your glossary training is over, right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Kind of the final question I have for you is, because we'll wrap it up here.
Sure.
Where do people find you?
Yeah, people find us at cwtacademy.com. That's our training center. That's our on-demand training platform. And if you need consulting work, then it's cleanwaterats@adamtomsam.com.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. As I always do, I do a call to action to the audience. And so my call to action today is to realize where your stormwater goes.
That's right. It always runs downhill, by the way.
It does. And every one of us within a half a block of your house has a drain that the stormwater goes down to. So I encourage you to go look in it, think about what you do that puts stormwater in there, and to realize and think of stormwater as a science, not just the rain. So thanks again, Nathan, for being here.
Thank you.
Really
appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you to today's special guest. Join us again on the next Puddlecast.